Hey everyone, this is Gilded Age, and I'm here with my recon review of The Gilded Age, season number 3, episode number 7, which is titled Excommunicated, and this title basically links to McAllister's book. It's a real book that he ended up publishing, which ended up sharing a lot of the secrets and scandals about what's happening in the society's top 400 and all of that stuff. And of course it doesn't go down well, because even though he doesn't name names, there is enough information and references that it points to people like the Russells, Mrs. Astor, even the Van Ryans, and all of that stuff. Now, in the previous episode, a major thing that happened was John Adams' death, and I thought that it was kind of like a fake out, that he might still be alive, that he might be like so close to dying and all of that stuff. But no, it turns out that the creative team decided to actually kill John Adams, basically fridging him to keep on developing Oscar's storyline, which I still feel that it could have still been developed without John Adams dying, but it is what it is. We'll get to it in a bit. We finally got a scene where Bertha is in the Van Ryan's house because of the book. We have Mrs. Fish, we have Lena, we have Bertha, we have Agnes and Ada. Everyone talking about what they need to do with about McAllister now that the book has been published. And of course, all of them decide that they are gonna excommunicate him from society, and they have to present a united front, because one of the ways to basically kill gossip is by proving that the gossip is not real. Now, fans have been waiting to see Bertha actually be invited into the Van Ryan house, and I feel that this moment could have been a lot bigger, but the way it's presented, it's very very casual per se, especially with Marian having said no to marrying to Larry. It's like this could have been a bigger moment. I know that Bertha doesn't know that the engagement has been called off, but in her mind, Marian is still to marry Larry. So again, I feel like there could have been more. There could have been more here. Because Armstrong is also reading the book, and she's like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff about these rich people. There's also some stuff about Mr. Oscar that I don't really understand. And of course, the rest of the staff knows. Everybody knows, but they're not going to say anything. George is still showing a cold shoulder to Bertha, and Bertha's like, what the heck do you want from me, George? I fixed things with Gladys. Now what? And then George is like, you know what? Stop telling me about these parties and gossip and wanting to show a united front, because I've got bigger things to deal with. I need money, otherwise we'll be in financial ruin and all of that stuff. Now, I do feel I understand where George is coming from, but considering how we have seen him act in the previous 2 seasons, I feel that he's kind of out of character in a way. I can see George being this annoying and difficult towards Bertha, but I think it could have been handled a lot better. George ended up telling Hector that, hey, the payment for that's in Gladys's name is going to be a bit late. There might not even be a payment anymore because we are facing certain financial issues. And yeah, you can tell. And even Sarah brings it up. And Sarah's like, well, if payments aren't to be coming in, you should send Gladys back to America. And Hector is like, but what if I don't want to send her back to America? As far as the spy situation is concerned, it turns out that, yeah, it is gonna be Bertha's maid, and Church ends up coming up with this plan where he ends up feeding Bertha's maid some false information, and then Mrs. Bruce and the cook are gonna keep an eye on her and see if she communicates with someone, and if the gossip is printed in the news, then yeah, they know that it's Andre who did it. According to Oscar, the newspaper ended up printing John Adams' eulogy, and Oscar is trying to put up a brave face, and of course Ada asks him how he's doing, but Agnes is like, oh, leave him be, Ada. Men don't feel these things as women do and all of that stuff. And then we cut to Oscar basically talking to John Adams' sister, who shared a lot of personal details with John, and she knows about John and Adam and all of that stuff. And it turns out that John ended up leaving his little house by the lake to Oscar. And he also had a picture of Oscar in his drawer along with his own picture, and he also left Oscar a letter. Now, he didn't necessarily legally leave Oscar the house, because it would have been quite weird back in the day with an unmarried gentleman just leaving another man who's not family property or estate. So basically what the sister is going to do is that she is going to have her lawyer write up the paperwork and give Oscar the house. And I'm like, oh, why the heck is John? Why is he dead? Why? And of course, the sister talks about how John loved Oscar and all of that. So I'm like, that's all good and well, but the thing is that he ended up dying near the end of season 3. And if we go through all of the seasons, Oscar and John didn't even share a lot of moments. So it's like, you didn't give us enough creatives. You didn't give us enough, especially if you were thinking of killing him off. Anyway, cutting to Gladys and Hector. Gladys is concerned about the money situation, and Hector's like, don't be, because I won't be sending you back. It doesn't matter. Gladys is, no, it does matter. And then they also have this little conversation where Gladys wants Hector to be more in charge and share more of his opinions, because even though Sarah has been looking over the estate, people are more interested in Hector doing it. Gladys wants Hector to be the man that he is inside. And then we have a scene where Oscar basically, he crashes out because he just came back after meeting John's sister and getting given a house from John, and then the aunts ask him how he's doing, and he's like, stop asking me that, okay? I miss him. What the heck do you want me to say more than that? At the funeral, I was sitting all the way in the back as if I was some stranger and I couldn't be in the front row and all of that stuff. And Agnes is like, what's come over you, Oscar? What's all of this is about? And then Oscar looks at Agnes and he's like, do you really want to know, Mama? And of course, Marion stands up. She's like, oh, because again, they know. And Marion's like, oh, come on, Aunt Agnes. John ended up saving Oscar's life when he was basically at rock bottom. He pulled him back. He helped pull himself up, invested in his business, got him back up and running, and then he mysteriously dies. Wouldn't you be upset? And I was like, yeah, I suppose I would be upset, I guess. And yeah, especially also the house situation, because Oscar does tell his mom and aunt about the house. And again, Agnes is like, why would someone leave you that? Why would his sister give you that house? And again, I'm like, but it was a good scene. And we have this sweet scene between Marion and Oscar, where Marion goes upstairs to check on Oscar, and she's like, tell me how I can help. I think I understand that John meant more to you than usually how men are supposed to be with each other, but I don't understand all of it. And Oscar was like, well, if you understood all of it, you would shun me away. And Marion's like, no, I have no intention of shunning you away, Oscar. Basically, Marion is like, love is love, And she's like, tell me, Oscar, how am I supposed to help you? And Oscar was like, you know what, this conversation that we just had, you have no idea how much you've helped me. I'm like, aw, Oscar. We have this little montage of the cook and Mrs. Bruce and Church keeping an eye on Andre. It's kind of funny, and it felt like a misdirect that in the end, Andre won't be revealed to be the leak, but no, she's the one snooping around and basically feeding the news gossip about the household. Of course, McAllister has been shunned from any party. He shows up to a ball that Mrs. Astor is hosting, and yeah, his name is not on the guest list, and he is asked to leave. Then we have this conversation between Lena and her daughter, where apparently the daughter is very close to being divorced, and Lena's like, no, whatever you do, you cannot be divorced. I will not be able to host balls and all of that stuff while also not having my daughter's name on the guest list. No, fix this, Charlotte. So it turns out that Mrs. Bruce and the cook weren't able to keep an eye on Andre, and they're like, Mr. Church, we couldn't keep an eye on him. And Mr. Church was like, oh, don't worry, I saw her leave. And then she ended up meeting this guy in the park, and he ended up handing her an envelope, which I guess has money in it. So we'll confront her soon enough. So the school is supposed to host Mrs. Harper, but the sponsor ended up having a change of heart at the very last minute, so they can't do it in the school anymore. So of course Peggy is like, but she's on her way from Philadelphia right now. What are we supposed to do? And Marion was like, can't we just have it here? And Agnes and Ada is like, yeah, I'll host it. Don't worry. Let's have it at the house. And of course Peggy asks Marion about the Larry situation, and Marion is like, no, there's nothing for me to say about it. Just leave it, Peggy. And Peggy's like, but all of us have made mistakes, right? And yeah, with her and Mr. Fortune's situation, but no, it was different as far as Marion is concerned, and I can kind of see where she's coming from. Berta ends up talking to Lena at her house, at Aster's house, and it turns out that Aster cannot have the season end ball. And yeah, she basically she wants Berta to do it. Like she can't risk hosting the ball and planning all of that in the case that her daughter gets divorced. Alistair tries to talk to Berta as she's leaving, but she ignores him, and then he kind of barges into Lena's house, and he's like, Lena, I demand to talk to you. Like, I am society. I'm the one who ended up building all of these people around you. The 400 New York 400 are mine. They are not yours and all of that stuff. And Lena is like, yeah, it is true that I took a lot of your advice and recommendations, but you ridiculed us. And McAllister is like, I just published a book because I wanted to tell everybody that all of these rich people are not the same as you. They're ordinary. And Lena is like, can't you see that that's the exact thing that they won't forgive you for? We are different from other people. And then, yeah, she's like, you're barred from society. I'm never gonna invite you again anywhere. And Alistair is like, but don't forget, Lena, don't forget who you were. Without me, you're just a woman whose husband is not interested in you and all of that stuff. And I'm like, Alistair, what the heck were you expecting when you published that book? Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, you know? It's like, I get that Alistair was basically using all of this society drama as like some sort of social experiment, but he should have been more aware of the consequences. And yeah, Church, the cook, and Mrs. Bruce end up confronting Andre, and turns out that if a gossip piece from Andre is published in the newspaper, she ends up getting freaking $40 for it each time. But yeah, it is what it is. She doesn't dislike Berta or anyone, but money is money, and yeah, all of her things are packed and she has to leave. And of course, Mrs. Bruce and Church and the cook are like, oh, Mr. Church, a very good plan of you to feed her wrong information. And Church is like, well, I was not born a butler, you know. Larry finally comes back, and of course, Church hands him the letter. He opens it, and yeah, Marion has called off the engagement. Of course, he storms across the street to talk to Marion. She is not going to talk to him, and he ends up talking to Ada about it. And Ada is like, I'm not your enemy here, Larry. It's just that she is not ready to talk to you, but she will. I guess I'll try and convince her to explain things to you. And she tries to hand Larry the engagement ring back, and Larry's like, no, I'm not going to receive this ring back unless it's from Marion herself. You tell her that. Larry ends up talking to George, and he doesn't necessarily bring up the Marion situation. He tries to, but George is like, okay, what about the business stuff? And yeah, he tells George that the mines that they have like so much copper in them, like millions worth of copper. And George is like, amazing. We can use that to leverage our stocks and basically continue the railroad project. You did good, Larry. You did amazing. Berta walks in, and Berta's like, oh, Larry, you're back. How is it? And George's like, he did well. He saved our family from financial ruin. And then the conversation moves towards Marion, and Berta is like, what happened? Larry is like, did you have anything to do with this? Because you didn't like Marion, right? Marion called off her engagement without telling me, like giving me an explanation. And Berta is like, well, in a way, if Marion did that, it basically talks more about her character than yours. But Larry is like, no, I love her. Mother, I love her. So, of course, he ends up accusing Berta, and even George kind of insinuates this, because he's like, we're all your pawns. You have been ambitious. You have been working all of these plans without basically asking us what to do. And Larry's like, you know what? I cannot live in this house anymore. I'm going to the gentleman's club. Bye-bye. And yeah, Berta kind of stands up for herself in front of George, and she's like, George, both of us are ambitious. We both have our ambition. And George is like, yeah, we do. But the thing is that your ambition has gotten out of hand. Like, when's the last time you have asked any one of us about what we wanted? Berta. Ada ends up talking to Marion and tells her what Larry said about not taking back the ring unless Marion gives it to him himself. And Ada is like, but Marion, the young lad deserves an explanation. And Marion's like, what is there to explain? I know he went to this house of ill repute. I know what men do there? Like, what is there even to talk about? Like, I'm better off being a spinster. And Ada's like, don't say that. Don't say that, Marion. Like, even though I only was able to be loved very, very briefly by Luke, I still cherish it, because being a spinster is like living a very, very lonely life. You end up seeing other loving couples and you try and mask it with a smile, but deep down you are hurt. And I wouldn't basically wish it upon anybody. And I understand where Ada is coming from. I feel like also back in the day, like there's a difference between wanting to be with someone and marrying someone and not being able to do it, compared to not wanting to marry at all and wanting to be lonely because you want to be not lonely, my bad, I didn't mean lonely in that sense, like staying single because you want to stay single. Like there's a big difference. And in this situation, I understand where Ada is coming from, because Ada was a woman that wanted to be loved, but things didn't kind of work out that way. So, and again, you can tell that Marion, in my opinion, feels like a lady who wants to be loved, who wants to find a man who loves her, wants to be married. And then basically forcing herself to not marry and wanting to be a spinster isn't really going to work out for her in the long run. She is going to feel lonely. With Andre having left, Mrs. Bruce is filling in as Bertha's maid. And yeah, she's like, I appreciate you doing that, Mrs. Bruce, but I'm going to try and find a new hire as soon as possible. Mrs. Bruce is like, we apologize that we couldn't find Andre. We couldn't basically sniff out Andre way earlier. And Bertha's like, no, there's nothing for you to apologize. Just goes to show that you don't necessarily know people who are even so close to you. And again, she is lonely. Like Larry, George, everybody has basically walked away from her. Gladys has warmed up to Bertha a lot, but Gladys isn't here. And I hope that Gladys returns in the finale and she kind of tries and set George and Larry straight. Of course, Larry wants to talk to Marion, and he knows that he can't do that. He just can't barge into the house yet. So he goes to the school where Marion is basically teaching, and he basically confronts her, and he's like, okay, Marion, what the heck? And Marion's like, you really want to know, huh? You really? Well, I know that on the night of her engagement, you didn't go to Delmonico's, you went to a house of ill repute, and you lied to me. And Larry's like, but I promise nothing happened there. And Marion's like, then why didn't you tell me that, huh? Why? And also, are you apologizing because you really went there, or are you just apologizing now because you got caught, Larry? So and again the bell rings. It's time for her class, and Larry's like, you know what, this conversation isn't over, Marion. We have this meeting between George and his competitor, where Clay comes in, and George is like, no, the railway project is going well, the deal with Merrick is basically final. And Clay is like, no, he's bluffing, he doesn't have the capital for it. And George is like, oh no, on contraire, my dear friend. Basically, Larry went, he had the mines analyzed, and yeah, the mines do have a lot of copper, with millions and millions worth of copper, and we're all good. And the fact is that you, Clay, you missed it. You missed that. And of course, the competitor who ended up hiring Clay basically fires Clay, and we have this scene between Clay and George, where Clay is just sitting, and George is like, okay, so I fired you, Clay. Okay, that happened. But why did you make me an enemy for yourself? Why did you do that? And again, there's no business for you here. You're over in New York. And Clay was like, no, think about it again. I'm basically like a cockroach with thousands of lives. And I'm like, Clay, just admit defeat and just disappear. McAllister ends up going to talk to Bertha, and Bertha's like, yeah, with everything that's happening, especially with Charlotte, Lena basically wants me to host the ball, and I'll do it. And then McAllister's like, yeah, do it. Make society your own. And also, talking about society, will you invite me? And Bertha's like, no, I cannot invite you, McAllister. You did what you did, and you just have to deal with the consequences. However, I will be inviting Aurora and Charlotte and all of that, because I'm gonna stand against divorce and how divorce impacts women and how they're shunned from society after divorce, even though they're not at fault. And McAllister is like, okay, so you're giving Aurora the benefit of the doubt, but why not me? And again, Bertha's like, because you intentionally did what you did. Aurora had no say in the matter. And also with how things are going between her and George, I doubt that George is gonna divorce Bertha. I doubt that that's gonna happen. But she's basically looking down the line about what might happen to her. And I like the fact that she's kind of helping other women as well when it comes to with the divorce situation. But yeah, McAllister is done. Hector, Gladys, and Sarah have a conversation where, yeah, they tell Sarah that they'll be off to America and the very first thing in the morning. And Sarah's like, but why was I not told about it? And they're like, well, we're telling you now. And then they also want Sarah to go live in London at some house because they're like, well, you know what, Sarah, we want you to have fun, go away instead of just basically trying to handle things here. Just live your own life, Sarah. Shoo. And yeah, we have this scene between Jack and Marion, which I wasn't expecting at all. I thought that Jack had been written out, but apparently not. He's been looking at these very, very beautiful houses to buy, and Marion has been helping him, and they end up finding this nice little house, and I guess Jack is gonna... He's gonna purchase this house, and I'm kind of interested in seeing where Jack's storyline goes because I feel like he's gonna keep on inventing things. However, because he's new money, it's gonna be a bit difficult, and he's young, with not married, no family and stuff. It's gonna be a bit difficult for him to enter society. And then he brings up Larry, and Marion's like, please don't talk about it. And Jack is like, I haven't been honest with you, Miss Marion. I'm just gonna tell you that even though he was with me, I can assure you that nothing of ill repute happened. We just had a drink and we just came back. Nothing happened. You have to trust me. And yeah, Peggy and the doctor they have this budding romance. He's very impressed with what Peggy is able to do. And then there's this ball that's happening. And of course, Peggy is going to attend the ball with her family. But William is like, no, why don't you attend it as my guest? Ooh. And then we cut to the scene where William's mother is having this conversation with another woman. I think her name is Ernestine. And she's like, yeah, everybody's talking about the new woman that William has taken a liking to, Peggy Scott, how considering her history, and she's like, what history? And this is where Ernestine ends up telling William's mom about Peggy's past, where she ended up giving her son up for adoption and all of that stuff. And yeah, William's mom is like, no, William needs to know this. He wouldn't want to be with a woman of that repute after hearing all of this. Berta goes in to tell George and Larry that she'll be the one hosting the ball and Gladys and Hector are coming. It's gonna be amazing. And they ended up finding the spy. It was Andre. And yeah, George and Larry are just not interested in it all. They are basically giving her the cold shoulder. And again, I'm like, oh, stop it, stop it, stop it. And yeah, Berta just walks away. Everybody is impressed by the speech. It's amazing. And of course, the Van Ryn sisters are very happy to support the cause. And now that everybody's invited to tea after the speech, this is where the woman who's from the Heritage Foundation, she kind of ends up talking to Agnes about wanting to basically promote the family name and all of that stuff. And Agnes doesn't want nothing to do with that woman because, again, she feels that she's going to be asking for money for whatever project she has in mind. The guests are talking about what they just heard with the speech and how they feel like everyone should have equal rights, especially women having the right to vote. And then Marion basically drops some statement about how women should not be dependent on men for their futures, and she kind of walks away. And Peggy's friends are like, is she okay? And Peggy's like, yeah, she called off an engagement. She's up in her feelings right now. Having heard what his mom wanted to tell him about Peggy, he's like, yeah, you know what? I hear you, Mom, but the thing is that I still have to talk to Peggy about all of this. She owes me an explanation. And the mom is like, she owes you nothing, and you don't owe her anything. He's like, no, I gotta go, and I gotta go talk to Peggy directly. And we have a scene where William does end up paying Peggy a visit very, very late at night, and he's going to wait for her downstairs. And then over at the Russell's house, everybody's happy about the mine situation, the railway situation. But then this stranger comes in with the gun, and he shoots the guy that's right in front of us, and he then raises his gun to shoot George, and then the screen cuts to black. Now, I feel that George does get shot, but I think like he'll survive because, again, we have a doctor right across the street. Everybody's gonna hear the gunshot. William is gonna be called in, or he's gonna run towards the Russell house and save George or some of that, and something like that. And as far as who had George killed or who wanted George killed. I feel it could be Clay, it could be someone else. But yeah, a very, very intense episode. But I think that George is going to be okay because, again, we have a doctor right across the street. And as far as Peggy and William are concerned, I think they're going to be okay as well. But yeah, let me know what you thought of the episode down in the comment section below. And until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay blessed. See you guys later. Bye.